It's estimated that by 2028, about 75% of discretionary income is going to be controlled by women. That's us. You might say, I'm not interested in money, I don't care about money, but just think about the amount of money that's flowing right now through our fingertips. I mean, even right now, somewhere between 70 and 80% of consumer purchasing decisions are controlled by us. Money has an impact on our lives. Issues and stresses around money lead to divorce, to hospitalization, all sorts of kinds of stress. Money is important. And right now, more than ever, it's time for women to recognize that we have a role in understanding how money works and making it work for us rather than the other way around. How do we make sure that we can build what we have? We can protect what we have. We're growing that for ourselves, for our kids, for the next generation. So let's just take a quick look at a couple of important rules of money. And this is just a start. It's just scratching the surface. But this actually is a foundation and a starting point for making decisions around money. One of those is, how does money grow? There are three main ways that money grows. And one of them is in a fixed account. So a fixed account, you maybe haven't heard that term, but you all know what it is. It's like your savings account. Usually it's a pretty low interest rate. Right now, if you're in a traditional fixed account, you're often closer to 0% growth in there than you are even to 1%. If you're doing really well, you know what you're doing, you've got on that trend of high yield savings accounts, then you might be in an online savings account earning yourself 4.5%, 5%. And it's incredible that we can do that today. But fixed, generally speaking, just a low interest rate is actually not really even hardly ever keeping up with inflation, but it's a great place for an emergency fund. And here's another quick tip. Start thinking 3 to 6 months when it comes to your emergency fund. You definitely want to have that in place because that can mean the difference between a crisis and event to work through when life throws you a curveball. So fixed, one way that money grows, which is not really growing. It's really losing to inflation. The next is variable. And this is what so many of us think of when we think of saving for our future. Because we're thinking the stock market, we're thinking of investing. It has those ups and downs. It's a roller coaster, sometimes a bit of a heart attack, where we're hoping in the long haul to be able to make in the 6 to 12% range. Your standard retirement account really only is often earning in the 5 to 8% range, but way, way better than your normal standard banking account. And if you really know what you're doing in that variable space, you can do really well. Sometimes it's a little bit like gambling. We don't know who that next Netflix, that next Bitcoin is going to be, but if you do figure that out, you can do incredibly well. So that's that second type, variable. The third is actually indexed. And indexed strategies, I have found, are the least familiar for people. An index strategy, what it does is something called market mirroring. It's mirroring an index, and an index is simply, what it simply is a grouping of companies. Like the S&P 500, the Dow Jones. If you're in an index, you're diversifying your risk because you're basically purchasing into a whole bunch of different companies. You're not going to have the incredible heights of being only within 1 or 2 companies if they rise really well, but similarly, you're not going to take the incredible losses of if you gamble wrong and you're in a company that tanks and doesn't make it. So you're diversifying in that way, but that's still variable. So an indexed strategy is market mirroring, is using one or more indexes for crediting growth to your account. You're not in it, so you're never at risk of loss. You've got a floor of 0, a guaranteed a floor of 0. And I'm telling you, in the financial industry, guarantee is a legally binding term. It's an important term. But with an indexed strategy, you can earn that same 5 to 12% returns over time with never, ever, ever being at risk of loss. Real quick here, I want to tell you that the way money grows and loses can be a little bit different. And what I mean by this is, so let's say you have 100,000 in the market. Let's say that you have a 50% growth year. Now that 100,000, that's looking really good, right? 150,000. You're happy, you're doing great. Now you're going to actually, the next year, let's say there's a market drop and it's going down, it's 50% down. If you don't think about it, you might think, I had a 50% gain, a 50% loss. Well, at least I'm at 0, right? No. What's half of 150,000? You're now down to 75,000. It's not even what you started off with of 100,000. How money grows and how it loses is different. your average return was 0, your actual is more like negative 25%. So that was a little bit of a sidetrack. But if you're an indexed strategy, you don't have to worry about that because you've got that floor of 0. When your money drops, it's not your money dropping, excuse me, when the market drops, your money doesn't. You've got 0 as your friend. You've got that floor in place. And so then the next rule of money I want to look at now is how do we keep our money? Because with that first rule, you're thinking, okay, how do I make it? What's an appropriate place for different types of money, really, right? You do want something in the emergency fund. It does make sense to have something in variable usually. What portion should be in indexed and growing for you, protected from market loss, but still with that growth potential. Now, how do you keep it? Because generally speaking, we're taxed in 3 main ways. You've got your taxable, you're taxed on that income you make, any kind of growth, that high yield savings account, you've got that growing for you. You're taxed again on that at the end of the year. It's Uncle Sam's favorite. Well, then you also have your tax later bucket. And this is where many of us end up through our retirement plans. Whether that's through work or an IRA, if you're your own owner, your own business owner, that money is growing, usually growing for you, tax deferred. You're not paying taxes on the growth. It is way better than your tax now bucket where you're taxed again and again and again. Way better. The downside is you are taxed, and that tax is on that larger amount in retirement on your harvest. You might say, surely that doesn't make that much of a difference, but just think about it. So let's say that you had to purchase, let's say you're a farmer, and you're going to get $100 worth of seed. You have everything else you need, just the seed. You buy that, they say there's going to be 20% tax. You say, well, okay, that's fine, but I'd rather not pay it. They say, don't worry, you don't have to pay it now. You can just pay it on the harvest down the road. And you're like, yes, score. Just gonna spend $100. Now I'll have more money down the road once I have a harvest. So somebody might not really think about it, but then down the road, their harvest comes and it's worth $10,000. And then suddenly they owe a couple grand in taxes. All of a sudden, that $20 at the get-go sounds a whole lot better than a couple of thousand down the road. And the reality is, in today's reality, honestly, we don't know if taxes are going to be the same in the future. Are they going up or are they going down? Like, I would like it if they went down. They're probably going up. We're trillions in debt as a nation. And so that type of a strategy in some ways is like having an open-ended contract with the US government saying, hey, I'm going to pay you taxes in the future at whatever rate you decide they're going to be. That's tax deferred though. Remember, still better than your tax now where you're getting taxed again and again and again. You never capture the full power of growth of compounding interest. Now the third type we call tax advantaged. And what tax advantage does is it says, let's get those taxes out of the way now. Pay that $20 now. Set that money aside that you're going to save for your future anyway. Consistently set that aside. It's growing tax-free. You access it tax-free in retirement and you don't have to worry about that again. So with these 2 rules, what that can do is then help us to think, where am I putting my money and how am I preparing myself to minimize the impact of taxes on what I'm making and growing. Hope that's helpful for you and look forward to talking more. Always feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions.